What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. Today we're going to be doing something that differs a little bit from the norm of what we've been doing here recently on the channel, so it's going to be new to everybody. Lately we've been doing a lot of work with bolt action rifles, but today we're actually going to be using a AR15, so it's a semi-auto, obviously. Now, today we're going to be using this gun right here. This is actually on an Anderson receiver set, but it actually started its life as a Windham Weaponry SRC model, and at the time it was about 500 bucks, and that's when AR-15s were still kind of somewhat expensive, but they were starting to come down. And this gun actually has pretty much had every part on it stripped out and replaced except for the barrel and maybe the buffer system, but pretty much everything else is different from when it began its life in some factory. So anyway, this gun has actually shot some really good groups in the past, and I may or may not throw up some photos of previous groups or previous targets or whatever, but this gun at this point has had about 3,000 rounds probably put through it, so it's had quite a bit of wear on it. Now I want to see what kind of groups we can still produce with it using some bullets that we haven't tried yet. So today we're going to be using some accurate powders. It's going to be accurate A-2460 powder, and we're going to be using some, I want to say generic, but that's just because I don't really know what they are. There's some 50 grain ballistic tip bullets that I got off of Gunbroker. I looked up at one point, there were some pulled bullets or some unloaded federal bullets that they use in some kind of coyote load in 223, but they didn't have any pull marks or anything. They're in perfect condition, and they were about 6 cents a piece. So I just got a really good deal, and I've shot some of them already out of other guns, and they've done pretty well. So anyway, this gun right here, we are going to test its paces, or put it through the paces rather, and see how it does. I was shooting this gun the other day at 360 yards in the configuration that it's in now with the red dot, so that's not really ideal for shooting that far, but we were using the camera. I'll throw up some footage to spot shooting with this gun. All right, go ahead.
Hit. Hit on the right side. Hit. Hit low left.
But we were still hitting steel at 360 yards on a fairly regular basis using factory 55 grain full metal jacket ammo. So it's pretty cheap stuff, but it was shooting pretty good. So I'm just curious to see if we can still get under an inch with this thing, but like I said, it's had a lot of rounds put through it, so I don't know if it can still manage it. But we're gonna try out something new, see how it does, and just do it for fun. But anyway, for those of you that are interested in what all I'm using on this gun in terms of how it's set up and what kind of equipment is currently on it, I'll go over that real quick. If you guys aren't interested, just skip ahead to the shooting, but I'm going to try to briefly overview everything that's on here so that you guys can kind of get an idea. So real quick, for those of you guys that are interested, let's go over some of the components on the gun. We got a cheap sling from Midway. Starting from the rear, we have a Magpul stock. We have a Fab Defense pistol grip, which I find very comfortable. I feel like I have small hands and this fits me really well. We've got a LaRue MBT trigger in here, and it's a 2-stage trigger. This thing is phenomenal for the money. I love this trigger. We've got a Radian Raptor charging handle and a Fail Zero bolt in there. We got an Aimpoint Pro 2MOA red dot, which I also really like this optic. I think it's a really good optic. I've been a big fan of it for a while now. We got a UTG Pro handguard. I think the handguard has done really well as well. We've got a Yankee Hill low profile gas block. We've got a BCM CAG handguard. I think that's the CAG. I'm not sure if that's the correct acronym, but I'm pretty sure that's it. It's a hand stop. And we've got kind of a generic muzzle device on here that I actually bought on eBay, but it does a pretty darn good job, and you'll see probably some of that here in a minute. But anyway, the barrel has remained from the Windham Weaponry SRC model. The barrel is still the same, but aside from that, pretty much everything else has been changed out in terms of major components. Some of the little small pieces on here, some of the nitty-gritty stuff like the magazine release and the bolt release, they're still the same. But for the most part, like I said, all the main stuff has kind of been swapped out, but the gun does a pretty good job. I didn't put a ton of money into it except for some of the more important stuff like the the optic, that's definitely a more expensive optic. And the handguard was a little more pricey as well, but aside from that, most of the stuff was fairly cheap. When I bought it, it wasn't super expensive, so I put something together that was going to get the job done and just kind of fit me and be something that I like. So anyway, that's what we got going here. Let's go take this thing out and shoot it, see how it does. All right, we're gonna try to do this fast because very quickly running out of daylight. Got the target set up. Got the gun ready to go. We've already got the first group on target. We did that yesterday, but the weather was not good enough to do the full batch of low development, so we only got it started with the first group, but here's the second one. Let's get them on paper. It looked really good except for that last shot. We had 4 easily within an inch. And that last one strung it off pretty bad. Alright, go ahead and go with the next one. It's going to be a third group. So we're at 24 grains now. Last one was 23 and a half. That group sucked. Alright, we'll give the barrel a minute to cool down. I'll grab the brass. Alright, next up is 24 and a half grains. Hopefully these will start looking better. They're not looking too good right now. This gun's had quite a few rounds put down the pipe, but I still think we can get some decent accuracy out of it for a while. Although this is my first time trying 50 grain bullets through it, so I didn't really quite know what to expect. But based on the twist rate, I thought it might be better than some of the heavier bullets that I've actually shot fine through it. We keep having one round string off and ruining the groups. We had 4 right in there, and then the 5th one just decided to go off and be by himself. Bummer. Alright, so we let the barrel cool off. We went down and marked our target. Now we're going to shoot our next string with, I think, 25 grains. Let's see how it does. I'm hoping these groups will start to shrink down a little bit. Alright. Alright, so we start on 23. So we got 23, 24, 25. We're on 25 and a half. lot of horizontal strain on that one. My eyes are starting to water because that muzzle brake's kicking all that gas right back in my face. It's getting kind of hard to focus. All right, next up we got 26 grains. Yeah, that group is pretty rough. None of these are looking too good, although I can't say that I was expecting anything spectacular out of this gun because it has had a lot of rounds put through it already. I kind of wanted to play with these bullets a little bit, and as of right now, this is the only barrel that I have on hand. So I figured, you know what, maybe I can go ahead and just turn this into a coyote gun, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and build another upper and just use this lower for doing multiple things. But I mean, the groups aren't terrible, but I would kind of hope for a little bit better if I was going to use this for a coyote load, especially if you're hunting out to like 400 yards, just depending on where you're at. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and continue firing. We're going to do the last 3 groups here, and then we'll go ahead and get back to the bench, look at it a little closer, and call it a day. All right, next up is 26.5 grains. We go for the bottom right diamond. Man, that just sucks. That group looked decent for a while, then it didn't. Alright, let's go mark the target. Alright, we only got 2 loads left. 27 grains is up next. Let's see how they do. Yep, they've pretty much only consistently got worse. I'll have to show you guys this here in a second, but I put a cardboard box in front of the camera to try to keep the muzzle blast from the muzzle brake from damaging the camera, basically, because it's so concussive that I would worry about the internals actually getting screwed up over time if I didn't have anything to kind of soften that blow or completely eliminate it on the camera, so I put a cardboard box in front of it to just kind of catch some of that. I didn't know how long it would last, but the box is definitely getting destroyed, so I'll have to show you guys here in a minute. For those of you that are like, oh, it won't hurt your camera, I'll show you what it did to the box and see what you think after that. All right, last up, 27.5 grains. Everything looks good pressure-wise. The cases all look fine. We don't gotta worry about any of that. Just gonna shoot this last group and call it a day. Alright, that's it. We're done. Get back to the bench. So first I wanted to show you guys what happened to this box. Here's our muzzle brake, right? Definitely got some directional ports on it. There's the box. This thing was perfectly fine before we started shooting, but literally just the gases getting redirected out of this thing and pushing up against this box just, I mean, it shredded it. It just totally tore it to pieces. And there's pieces laying all over the ground where they were blowing on me. So just FYI, if you guys put on a muzzle brake, it does kick out quite a bit of force, even out of a small gun like this. 223 is not a very big cartridge, but it definitely throws out a punch of air. So if you guys don't know that, which, I mean, in the shooting world, it is kind of common knowledge for those of you that are going to be trolls in the comments and say, yeah, everybody knows that. Well, some of you may not know that. So anyway, if you put a muzzle brake on your gun and you intend to be shooting next to people, that's why it kind of pisses them off.
Alright guys, so we just got done shooting these loads out of the AR, and as you can see, the groups are really not all that great, and we'll talk about that more here in a minute once we get back to the bench as to why that may have been. But for now, we're going to dive deeper into these groups and give you guys an average at least so that you know kind of what we got out of today's testing. So we fired 10 5-shot groups, and out of those 10 5-shot groups, our group average was 1.735 inches, which isn't all that great. But like I said, we'll go into more depth on that here in a minute. But for now, let's go ahead and look at each group individually and show you what we got. So the first group that we fired, which actually wasn't fired today, it was fired yesterday, but it was too windy to continue, so we went ahead and just waited to do the rest of the testing today. But anyway, the first group was 23 grains, and it was 1.198 inches. The next was 23.5 grains, and it was 1.691 inches. The next was 24 grains, and it was 1.794 inches. The next was 24.5 grains at 1.534 inches. The next was 25 grains at 1.178 inches. The next was 25.5 grains at 1.537 inches. Next was 26 grains at 1.981 inches. Next was 26.5 at 2.100 inches. Next was 27 grains at 2.140 inches. And lastly, we had 27.5 grains at 2.198 inches. So with having the last several groups opening up more and more and ending off with several groups over 2 inches that really didn't show a whole lot of promise for the higher charge weights, we definitely saw a lot more spread on the higher end, which usually people don't necessarily want. For me, I'm not really too big of a advocate for pushing max charges on the regular, but if it shoots the best, then sometimes I'll go ahead and load them anyway. But anyway, we were just looking for something that we could maybe plink with and do some coyote hunting with, so it wasn't a really big deal, but I just kind of wanted to see what this barrel could shoot still, because it used to produce some really good groups, but now it's starting to show that maybe it can't do that anymore. So anyway, let's go ahead and get back to the bench and talk about this a little more.
Alright guys, we got the gun back in its original configuration. As you can see, it's got the red dot back on it and the bipod's been taken off. But anyway, the gun didn't shoot all that great, which is okay. It's lived a rough life. It's had quite a few rounds put through it, so the barrel's pretty worn. But nonetheless, it didn't shoot terrible. I mean, it didn't shoot all that great, but still for what it's been through, it's not shooting too bad. And considering the barrel came off of a pretty inexpensive gun, I'm kind of proud of how it's still shooting. So anyway, the point of this video was that gun has probably had at least 3,000 rounds put through it to date, and we wanted to try some lighter bullets because it's a 1 in 9 twist barrel, and theoretically with that slower twist we thought some of the lighter bullets may actually fly better than some of the heavier stuff that we've put through it, because we've shot between 55 to 75 grain bullets out of this thing, and they've all been able to shoot pretty well provided I did my part and found the right recipe with those bullets. So knowing that, it was worth giving it a shot again, because like I said, we were shooting the other day at 360 yards as it's configured without a scope, and we were able to hit steel on a fairly regular basis. Now, it wasn't extremely consistent, and I couldn't see what was going on downrange, and with a 2 MOA dot at 360 yards, you're covering most of the chest of a steel target, so it was a little wonky, but the point is, it was fun to do, and I figured, why not? We'll give it a shot. The bullets didn't shoot amazing, but they didn't shoot awful either. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. So anyway, this barrel has probably lived its life on this channel in terms of doing accuracy testing, but we may build a new upper or at least get a new barrel and do some more videos with that. So what I want from you guys is to let me know what you want to see. Do you want to see me build a new upper and do some load development with that, or do you want to see a new cartridge, or what? You guys let me know what you want to do. I appreciate your feedback, and I like hearing your thoughts, because it does kind of help me decide where to go from here and keep the channel full of content that you guys are interested in. So anyway, thank you again for watching. I appreciate you guys stepping in for another video. If you want to help support the channel in any way, shape, or fashion, the affiliate links below lead to Amazon. If you click on that and it takes you to Amazon, and then you buy something on Amazon within 24 hours of clicking on that link, it will give me a small commission off of whatever purchase you make, and it doesn't cost you a dime extra, but it does help me out a little bit to kind of afford doing some of this stuff. So anyway, once again, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you again on the next video. Take it easy.